Hey, honors ELA students. I was looking at some of the submissions that people have already made for Act 3, Scene 1, and it made me realize that there are some clarifications I wanted to make both for those who have already submitted and for those who are still looking at it. So I want to look at a few things in the third act that I want to make sure don't get missed, because it's arguably one of the funniest scenes in this play, definitely, and some experts even say in any of Shakespeare's comedies. So I'm going to switch back and forth between the PowerPoint and then the actual script, and hopefully that will prove to be helpful for you. So, of course, at the end of Act 2, or in Act 2, Scene 2, right, we have Titania being sung to sleep by her fairies. And so when Act 3, Scene 1 begins, right, Titania is still sleeping after Oberon, right, taking a personal interest in making sure that his plan does not get foiled, puts the love potion on Titania's eyes. And the players all enter, and of course, Quince, right, still the director, enters, says this is a perfect spot for us to rehearse, right? Open clearing, perfect. And Bottom, who wants to always make sure he has his hand in everything, says that there are several things that he is concerned about. And of course, that speaks to the first two questions. The first is, right, what two concerns is Bottom most worried about, and how are they going to resolve it? And of course, one of the biggest ironies of this is part of acting is supposed to be, if you're a really good actor, that you take the audience out of reality and make them truly believe that the actors are the characters that they're claiming to be. And of course, Bottom and Snug completely pull the rug out from under that by saying that because they are concerned that certain individuals might be afraid or concerned about some of the more dramatic aspects, that at the beginning of the scene they should clarify their position so that people will not be concerned. This second question, of course, is what are the technical difficulties? And I feel like the one regarding the set, in terms of what building needs to exist, is pretty straightforward. And later on in the scene, of course, in the play rather, it becomes ridiculous when you have one of the actors having to serve as an inanimate object and having two other actors using that actor to communicate with. So I don't want to get into too much detail with that one. Most of y'all seem to have a pretty good grasp of that, but I just wanted to point out that the first part of the question, the first technical difficulty that they run into, is actually resolved in two ways. The first is by looking at the almanac, but the second is by introducing an actor to provide additional support with regard to the lighting. So, of course, after they have discussed this, Bottom exits the stage and Puck comes along to watch the actors, and as he says, that if the mood strikes him, being the mischievous character that he is, he may decide even to act in it as well, which of course, you know, the play within a play, we know Puck is in fact an actor, but in this case he's observing her. And I apologize about my typos. The third question, of course, is pretty straightforward, that when Bottom returns, he now is significantly altered in his appearance. And what's a little bit less clear is the fourth question, though. we know that the character's name is Bottom. And so when you consider what animal he has been transformed into, we have to look at what play on words is being used there. I'll leave it at that to some degree, and of course it's appropriate because of the associations that are usually made with the type of animal that Bottom has been transformed into. So just keep that in mind when you are answering that particular question. Okay, the next thing I wanted to look at is looking at the play itself. Of course, in the PowerPoint, I point out that there's an irony and a parallel between this scene and the scene in Act 2, Scene 2, where Helena is completely baffled at the fact that now Demetrius is in love with her, when she of course has always seen him as in love with Hermia, and so of course she thinks that she's being made fun of. In this same way, right, when all of the actors see Bottom's new appearance, there's an irony because he has no idea that he has been transformed, and so he just thinks that the person calling him the Beast is an ass himself, right? He's mocking Snout, which of course adds that extra ridiculousness. And so he says, they're trying to make an ass of me, and he begins to sing that to show that he's not afraid. But when you consider that he has now the head of an animal that we would not normally associate with having a charming voice, when Titania wakes up and then goes on to say, right, I pray thee, gentle mortal, sing again, mine ear is much enamored of thy note. Right? On first view I say I love you. Right? There's an obvious, right, the effect of the enchantment is that she's saying things that are completely situationally as well as dramatically ironic, because you would never think that someone like transformed Bottom would have the voice of an angel, or that the queen of the fairies, right, would be in love with this pompous animal-headed actor. And he doesn't really understand why she is now claiming to be in love with him either. He says, reason and love keep very little company together nowadays, which of course kind of harkens back to the conversation between Hermia and Lysander at the beginning of the play. And then he says, too bad that honor's neighbors will not make them friends. And she says, thou art as wise as thou art beautiful. You are as wise as you are beautiful, which is another type of irony, because we can assume that he probably is not beautiful at all, which we can therefore make a deduction about how intelligent he also is. He is, in fact, as wise as he is beautiful, because in this particular situation, he is neither wise nor beautiful, but because she, Titania, has been bewitched, she, under the spell, believes that he is both. And so that's the sort of the illusion that's being made there. Shakespeare is purposely being ironic, both verbally and dramatically, to use Titania's transformation to say something that is true to her in a complimentary way, but also true to the audience in a less complimentary way. So I know I'm jumping around a little bit. There's one other thing I wanted to point out, which is at the very end of the scene. Titania begs Bottom not to leave, and brings in her fairies to try and make him an offer he can't refuse, makes him all these promises if she agrees to stay with him. And originally, Bottom seems very determined to get out of the woods. He may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's definitely perplexed by his situation, as all the characters tend to be. But he seems to experience a shift based on the casual conversation he starts making with the fairies. He starts joking around with them. He no longer seems to be looking as hard for a way out. And there's a much more romantic element to where Titania asks her fairies to bring him. And I'll leave you to the text to figure out exactly what that means. And then for the last question, just a reminder to look at what Oberon threatened to do, what his ulterior motive was, how he was going to get his revenge on Titania. And then based on Titania's interaction with Bottom, you can answer whether she in fact has succeeded, or he in fact has succeeded in accomplishing the goal that he set out to by placing the spell on Titania. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have already submitted, you can definitely resubmit again, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.